The Galactic Council had a problem. Well, technically they had 7,462 problems. But this particular one was currently eating through the reinforced durasteel walls of Detention Level 9, and that seemed rather pressing. The creature in question was a Carvath cub. For those unfamiliar with Carvaths, imagine if someone took a bear, crossed it with a velociraptor, added the temperament of a honey badger. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. And then gave it acid-dripping claws that could slice through starship hulls. Now imagine the baby version, still terrifying. Good. You're getting it. It has consumed 6 security drones, 4 stun barriers, and what I believe was someone's lunch, announced Director Zixtal, a Quintarian whose 4 eye stalks were drooping in what could only be described as bureaucratic exhaustion. In the last hour, Ambassador Tekena of the Vrix Collective clicked her mandibles in distress. We cannot simply eliminate it. The Carvath Empress would declare war on the entire council. Do you have any idea what a fully grown Carvath could do to our stations? I have seen the simulations, Zixtal replied dryly. They end with everyone screaming and the station looking like it went through a blender. A very angry, very thorough blender. This was all quite unfortunate because the cub, who had been found drifting in an escape pod, was technically under council protection. Its parents were missing, presumed dead after an ion storm. The Carvath Empress had made it very clear that the cub was to be kept safe until she could retrieve it. The problem was that keeping it safe and keeping everything else safe from it were turning out to be mutually exclusive goals. The council had tried everything. The Zenthari, masters of mental persuasion, had sent their finest mind calmer. He had lasted approximately 4 minutes before fleeing the containment area, gibbering about teeth, so many teeth, and such focused malevolence for one so young. The Gormath, who could commune with virtually any living creature, had attempted their legendary beast bonding ritual. The cub had responded by vomiting a corrosive substance on their sacred bonding crystals and then sitting in the puddle while making what the Gormath insisted was a deeply insulting gesture with its tail. The mechanical route hadn't fared better. The synthoids had built an automated care system with treats, toys, and gentle restraints. The cub had systematically destroyed every component while maintaining direct eye contact with the camera, which several analysts later reported gave them nightmares. Even the Yulari, who could literally transform into any creature they encountered, had given up after one of them took cub form and got into a fight with the actual cub. The Yulari had lost. To a baby. The shame was still being discussed in hushed tones across Yulari space. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Tekena, her voice carrying the weight of someone about to propose something desperate. We could ask the humans? The room fell silent. Several species shifted uncomfortably. The humans, Zixtal repeated, his eye stalks suddenly standing at attention. The Deathworlders, the species that keeps apex predators in their homes for companionship. The ones who looked at wolves, literal pack-hunting carnivores, and said, yes, let us make these into thousands of varieties, including some small enough to fit in our carrying pouches. They do seem to have a way with difficult fauna, Tekena said carefully. They domesticated the Terran feline, added Counselor Merkthal, a normally stoic Krell whose scales rippled with what might have been admiration or horror. A creature that, by all accounts, domesticated itself purely to better position itself for eventual world domination, and humans simply accepted this. They worshiped these creatures digitally, There are more images of Terran felines on their information networks than there are stars in some sectors. "This is insane," muttered someone from the back. "This is Tuesday," Zixtal corrected. "We have already passed insane. We are now in the realm of why not try the crazy death worlders who think poison is a dietary preference." And so, with the kind of desperate optimism usually reserved for lottery winners and people who bet against entropy, the Council sent a transmission to the human delegation. The human who arrived 3 hours later was not what they expected. Most species anticipated either a grizzled warrior or perhaps one of those unsettling human scientists who smiled too much while discussing things that should not be discussed over meals. Instead, they got Marcus Webb. Marcus was 32 standard years old, which in human terms meant fully adult, but not yet at the age where humans started making back pain their entire personality. He had brown hair that looked like it had given up on any particular style, wore something the humans called a hoodie, emblazoned with the words "Galaxy's Okayest Xenobiologist," and carried a large canvas bag that seemed to be full of random objects. "So," Marcus said, surveying the monitoring screens showing the Karvath cub currently attempting to eat its own tail before getting distracted and attacking a wall instead. "That's the problem, child." "That is a juvenile Karvath," Zixtal said with as much dignity as he could muster. "It is not a child. It is an apex predator in larval form." "Yeah, looks like it's teething," Marcus observed, leaning closer to the screen. "And probably bored. Bad combination. That's basically a toddler with knives for hands." "We are aware of the danger," Tekena interjected. "Every species with expertise in animal handling has failed. The creature is uncontrollable." "Uncontrollable?" Marcus looked genuinely amused. "It's a baby. Babies aren't uncontrollable. They're just really, really good at communicating that they're unhappy. Usually by destroying everything in reach." "It dissolved a Gormath," Zixtal pointed out. "Did it kill the Gormath?" "Well, no, but then it was just communicating boundaries," Marcus said cheerfully. "Honestly, you folks are thinking about this all wrong. You're trying to dominate it, reason with it, or trick it into compliance. That doesn't work on human toddlers either, and they don't even have acid claws." "What do you suggest?" Tekena asked, her mandibles clicking with barely restrained skepticism. Marcus set down his bag. "I suggest you let me spend an hour with it. Alone." The room erupted. 17 different species began talking, clicking, humming, or emitting pheromones of concern simultaneously. The universal translator gave up and just displayed general disagreement and concern for human survival on everyone's screens. "Absolutely not," Zixtal said firmly. "We cannot be responsible for your death." "Then don't be," Marcus replied with a shrug. "Look, I signed the liability waivers before I came up here. I know what I'm doing. Probably. Like 70% sure." 70%? Okay, 65. But that's still passing in most human educational systems. Somehow, and this is where council members later questioned their judgment, they agreed. Perhaps it was desperation. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the way Marcus smiled with such absolute confidence, while simultaneously admitting he was only moderately sure he wouldn't die. They watched on monitors as Marcus entered the containment area. The Karvath cub, who had been in the middle of shredding what used to be a feeding trough, immediately stopped and stared at him. Its eyes, 6 of them arranged in a manner that suggested evolution had really committed to the nightmare fuel aesthetic, locked onto the human. Marcus stood still. He didn't approach, didn't make threatening gestures, didn't try to project dominance or submission. He just stood there, looking bored, actually. He yawned. The cub's tail lashed. Its claws extended, scraping against the floor with a sound that made several observers flinch. It lowered its head, muscles bunching. Marcus pulled out a sandwich from his bag and started eating it. "What is he doing?" Tekena hissed. "Being lunch?" someone suggested nervously. But the cub didn't charge. It watched, clearly confused by this creature that entered its territory, and then just didn't care, didn't challenge, didn't flee. Just stood there eating compressed protein and vegetables between two pieces of bread. Like this was a completely normal afternoon. Marcus finished his sandwich, crumpled up the wrapper, and tossed it in the general direction of a waste receptacle. He missed. The wrapper bounced off the wall. The cub pounced on it immediately, shredding it with enthusiasm. "Okay, good," Marcus muttered to himself, loud enough for the monitors to pick up. "We've established you're easily distracted and like destroying things. That's useful data." He reached into his bag and pulled out several items, setting them on the floor. A crumpled ball of what appeared to be metallic fabric, a length of rope with knots tied in it, and most peculiarly, a cardboard box. The cub abandoned the wrapper and approached cautiously, sniffing at these new objects. It batted at the metallic fabric ball, which skittered across the floor. The cub's entire demeanor changed. Its eyes widened, its body lowered into what could only be described as a play stance. And it pounced. For the next 10 minutes, council members watched in stunned silence as Marcus Webb, human xenobiologist, played with an apex predator cub using a crumpled ball of emergency blanket material. The cub would pounce, Marcus would kick the ball away, the cub would chase it. Sometimes Marcus would pull it away at the last second using the rope. The cub seemed to find this absolutely delightful, if the excited chittering sounds were any indication. "It's playing," Counselor Merkthal said, his voice filled with wonder. "It is actually playing." "Humans play with their predators," another counselor noted. "I have seen the videos. They call it enrichment." Finally, when the cub seemed tired, Marcus did something that made every observer lean forward in their seats or equivalent sensory positions. He sat down next to the cardboard box and simply placed his hand on it. The cub approached, curious. Marcus didn't move. The cub sniffed the box. Then, with the kind of deliberation usually reserved for important life decisions, the cub climbed into the cardboard box. It fit, barely. Its tail hung over one edge, and its head poked out the other side. But it was in the box, and it looked content. Marcus reached out slowly and scratched the cub behind what might have been an ear, or possibly a sensory organ, or for all anyone knew, a weapon deployment system. The cub's eyes half closed. A rumbling sound emerged from its chest. "Is it purring?" Tekena asked. "Impossible," Zixtal breathed. "Carvats do not purr." "That one does," Marcus said, apparently aware the monitors had audio. "Everything purrs if you find the right spot." "Well, not everything. I tried it with a Glornak once and nearly lost my hand. But most things." He continued scratching while the cub settled deeper into the box, its body relaxing in stages. "Here's the thing about apex predators," Marcus said, his voice taking on a lecturer's tone. "They're not evil. They're not trying to destroy things because they're malicious. They're just trying to meet their needs. Play, security, appropriate stimulation. This little one was scared, bored, and overstimulated all at once. Bad combination." "So your solution was a box," Zixtal said flatly. "Cardboard box. There's a difference. See, on Earth, We have these creatures called cats. Small predators, really efficient killers, can be absolute jerks when they want to be. And you know what cats love more than anything? More than expensive toys, engineered climbing, structures, or laser entertainment systems? Cardboard boxes, Tekena said, understanding dawning. Cardboard boxes, Marcus confirmed. Something about enclosed spaces. Makes them feel safe. Lets them observe without being observed. It's a den, a hiding spot, a fortress. We think it's about security and territory. Turns out, lots of predators like that feeling. Even ones from completely different evolutionary trees. He gestured at the now sleeping cub, still wedged in a box that had probably contained emergency rations at some point. You all tried to dominate it, control it, or force it to comply. You forgot the most important thing. It's scared. Its parents are gone. It's in a strange place with strange creatures. Everything here smells wrong, sounds wrong, feels wrong. Of course, it's aggressive. Aggression is fear wearing armor. So we just give it boxes? Counselor Merkthal asked. Boxes, playtime, appropriate stimulation, and for the love of all that's holy, stop trying to stun it or restrain it unless it's actually dangerous. Which it's not. Marcus stood up slowly, careful not to disturb the sleeping cub. It's just a baby. A really sharp, venomous, probably going to grow up to be terrifying baby, but still a baby. Over the next 3 days, Marcus essentially became the cub's keeper. He established a routine, play sessions with various indestructible toys he had fabricated or brought from Earth, feeding times with appropriate food that he had researched from Karvath biology databases, and rest periods where the cub would sleep in progressively larger cardboard boxes that Marcus somehow kept producing. The council members watched, fascinated, as the creature that had terrorized an entire station became manageable. Not docile, never that, but no longer attacking everything in sight. It still destroyed things, but now it was destroying designated things, like the rope toys Marcus made or the balls he provided. How did you know this would work? Tekena asked on the 3rd day, watching the cub wrestle with what appeared to be a rubber version of Marcus's boot. I didn't, Marcus admitted. Not for sure, but I've worked with difficult fauna before. Earth has a lot of apex predators. We sort of specialized in figuring out how to coexist with things that could kill us. Why? Zixtal asked, genuinely curious. Why not simply eliminate them or avoid them? Marcus looked at the director like he'd suggested eliminating art or music. Because they're magnificent? Because they have a right to exist? Because a world without apex predators is a world out of balance? He shrugged. Also because we're humans, and we have this really weird compulsion to befriend things that could eat us. It's probably a flaw, but it's our flaw. Your species is insane, Zixtal said, but there was affection in his tone. Yeah, we get that a lot, Marcus agreed. But we're useful insane. There's a difference. When the Karvath Empress arrived to collect her subjects' offspring, she was prepared for the worst. She had heard the stories of her people's cubs. She knew their capacity for destruction. She entered the station with full royal guard, expecting to find a war zone. Instead, she found her grandniece asleep in a cardboard box, while a human sat nearby, reading something on a datapad, and occasionally tossing a toy in the cub's general direction for when it woke up. The Empress, who stood 3 meters tall and had personally dismantled a pirate frigate with her bare claws, stared at this scene for a full minute. Explain, she finally rumbled, her voice like an avalanche having a conversation with an earthquake. Marcus looked up, saw the Empress, and did what any sensible human would do when confronted with a massive apex predator radiating authority. He smiled and waved. "Oh, hey, you must be here for the little one. She's been great. Well, after the first day, that was rough, but we figured out a routine." "You figured out a routine?" The Empress's tone suggested she was unfamiliar with these words, in this particular order. "Yeah. Turns out she just needed some structure, playtime, and a safe space. The box really helped. Something about enclosed areas seems to calm her down. Well, that and the rope toys. She's really into the rope toys." The Empress moved closer, her guards tensing. The cub woke up, saw her, and made a happy chirping sound before scrambling out of the box and rushing over. The Empress scooped up the cub with surprising gentleness, examining her. "She is content," the Empress said, sounding surprised. "Well-fed, stimulated but not stressed." She fixed her 6 eyes on Marcus. "What manner of creature are you?" "Human, ma'am. Xenobiologist, specialized in difficult fauna behavioral management." The council said every species failed to calm her. "They tried to control her," Marcus corrected gently. "I just tried to understand her. There's a difference." The Empress was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sound like boulders rolling down a mountain. "You're either very brave or very stupid, human. My friends say it's a healthy mix of both." "I like you," the Empress declared. "The Carvath will remember this. You have done our clan a great service." She paused, studying him. "Tell me, human, how did you know the box would work?" "Honestly, I didn't. But on Earth, we have a saying, if it fits, it sits. Turns out that's pretty universal." The Empress departed with her grandniece, leaving behind a council in a state of bemused contemplation and one human who was very much looking forward to a nap. "Marcus Webb," Zixtal said later as they processed the paperwork for the incident. "I must ask, did you really risk your life on a guess about cardboard boxes?" Marcus grinned. "Director, I'm human. We once had a guy who decided to test whether humans could survive in the upper atmosphere by jumping from it. We regularly keep spiders as pets. We eat peppers that cause pain receptors to trigger. We surf on waves that could crush us, climb mountains that could kill us, and dive into oceans full of things with way too many teeth." He leaned back in his chair. "Taking a chance on a cardboard box working on an alien predator cub? That doesn't even crack our top 100 risky behaviors. That's just Tuesday." "Your species terrifies me," Zixtal said. "Yeah," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "We get that a lot, too." The story of how a human tamed the untamable Carvath cub spread across council space faster than a warp-capable ship. It joined the growing legends of humanity. The species that had looked at the galaxy's most dangerous creatures and said, "But have you tried being nice to them?" Other species tried to analyze Marcus's technique, to break it down into steps that could be taught and replicated. They created detailed guides, the Webb method of apex predator cub management. They held seminars. They wrote papers. But they all missed the essential point, the thing that made Marcus's approach work. He had looked at a dangerous, destructive creature, and his first thought wasn't, "How do I stop it?" It was, "What does it need?" That ultimately was the most human thing of all. Not the bravery, not the risk-taking, not even the inexplicable cardboard box solution. It was the empathy. The bone-deep, sometimes foolish, often dangerous human compulsion to look at something with teeth and claws and the capacity for destruction and ask, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" It was the same impulse that had led ancient humans to befriend wolves. The same instinct that made them rescue injured predators. The same bizarre tendency to see danger and respond with compassion. Was it illogical? Absolutely. Was it risky? Without question. Was it the reason humans had survived and thrived on a death world that had tried very hard to kill them for millennia? Probably. In the end, the Council added difficult fauna management to humanity's growing list of galactic contributions, right alongside inadvisable bravery, concerning optimism, and weaponizing friendship. As for Marcus, he went back to his regular duties, which mostly involved explaining to various species that, no, they couldn't keep the dangerous creature as a pet, even if humans did it all the time. Though he did keep a stack of cardboard boxes in his quarters, just in case. Because if there was one thing the galaxy was learning about humans, it was this. They were absolutely the kind of species who would look at the most dangerous creature in known space and think, yeah, but have you tried putting it in a box? And then, impossibly, it would work. That was humanity. Terrifying deathworlders with the survival instincts of a particularly optimistic lemming, the empathy of a saint, and an inexplicable obsession with cardboard boxes. The galaxy didn't understand them. But the galaxy was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, it didn't need to. It just needed to let them do their thing and watch in amazed horror as they turned apex predators into purring cuddle monsters armed with nothing but patience, understanding, and occasionally, office supplies. After all, every species in the galaxy had tried force, technology, and ancient wisdom to solve the Carvath problem. It took a human with a cardboard box to actually succeed. And really, wasn't that just the most human thing ever?